John, we have the father of someone in the news this week.
Absolutely. Pat Mahomes will be joining us, which is terrific. We both remember him from his Mets days. Had some good years. I think he was 8-0 one year. His son Patrick was around with the team, shagging balls in the outfield, showing that he was a prodigy. And we all know that he is the best quarterback in the game today. And great get by you to get Pat Mahomes. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's saying about his son and about his the condition of his son's ankle.
Well, he'll talk to us about his son, who's playing in the Super Bowl on Sunday. We'll also ask him about those Met days and his playing days. You and I will talk about our biggest storylines coming up for spring training. And as always, we'll play Hit and Error to end the show. That's if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. John, as we're taping this, we're about a week away from the start of spring training. A little earlier this year for a group of guys because of the WBC, and then the whole group by midweek, the pitchers and catchers by midweek next week, and everybody not long after that. So not a ton of news. This is usually a quiet time, but the New York Post, the group of us, especially you, John, you got the first tip on this. Carlos Beltran was leaving the Yes broadcast booth to go back to the Mets, which is an interesting one because, of course, when last we joined Carlos Beltran and the Mets, he was their manager for about 60 days before he lost that job due to his involvement with the sign stealing scandal with the Astros. So what do you think about this? Good move, bad move, happy, sad?
Yeah. I think it's a nice story, even though, not because it's our story. It's probably the right thing that he's with the Mets. It's probably the right thing that he's in a front office. He's obviously a great baseball mind. Being a manager, I'm not sure that's the right role for him anyway. The Mets have a great manager, the manager of the year, Buck Showalter. I kind of think Eric Chavez is likely the next manager when they need one, which isn't anytime soon. So I think this is the right role. As far as, Yankee broadcaster, I heard him. I thought he was fine. He was criticized a lot. And obviously the Yankees felt that he needed work. They were going to call him into the studio. So it's probably best that he goes home, goes to the Mets, and goes to a role that he really fits.
Yeah, I think it's a role he really fits. I thought he was terrible on Yes.
Well, you're an honest guy.
I learned nothing from him in all the time he was on there, and that wasn't the person I knew. When he was a player, I certainly learned a lot from him because I think he knows a ton of baseball, whether he was holding back, etc., on the air. I don't know. A lot of this came up, John, when you and I talked about this on the show. About when Beltran was up for the Hall of Fame. I think he's been punished plenty, right? He get into the Hall of Fame. He probably has a good chance of getting in and deserves it. He lost the job. Alex Cora and AJ Hinch came back after a year and got a job. He deserves to work if he wants to work. And this feels like a first step back towards that.
Oh, he definitely deserves to work. I'm not quite as sympathetic as you are. He was the one player mentioned.
You were more sympathetic about him in the booth than me. We're playing.
We're going back and forth here.
Yeah,
I didn't vote for him this year. I withheld the vote, as a lot of people did. To me, he's clearly a Hall of Famer on merit, on his achievements as a baseball player. And as I said, I will vote for him next year. You may not love the fact that I withheld my vote this year. I knew he'd get the 5%. And I think that's the right result, that he gets into the Hall of Fame, but not on the first ballot. So I think we have the right result all around here. I don't know what he thinks about it. Maybe we'll get him on someday. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, John. That's a pretty big storyline going into spring training. Why don't we bat it around a little, John? I'll have you go first. Tell me like storylines you're looking forward to as this year begins.
Well, I wrote about this in the Post, and my number one storyline.
It's a real good column. Everyone should go to nypost.com and go to John's story.
Thank you very much. My number one was Ohtani. Even though I think the Angels have less than a 5% chance to lock him up in spring training, we know they want to. Whether they'll be given that opportunity, even to give it a shot, I don't know. It's up to him. He's a year away from free agency. It would be bizarre at this point if we've got an all-time great player like this and still in his 20s who accepts a contract. Now, he's been very reasonable about contracts to this point. He signed a 2-year deal, ended up being one of the most underpaid players in baseball history last year at $5.5 million, and took the $30 million deal, which is a record as an arbitration figure this year. And, he came here before he was a free agent, and he's been vastly underpaid. So he's not all about money. But that being said, I'm going to be shocked if they're able to do it. Obviously, Artie Moreno's still there. This is a guy I think he really wants to win. Can't blame him for that. They have not done that in Anaheim, LA, whatever you want to call it yet. And my belief is that their chances are zero, or almost zero yet. I'm saying it's my number one storyline for the spring.
Yeah, well, they don't win because of Artie Moreno. Not, like he brought in, he was the motivating guy for Hamilton, for Pujols, for Rendon. So he needs to look in the mirror why they're now winning with Ohtani and Trout for why and when he's staying. And John, I agree with you. I think this is the year of Trout. Not only does he sign an extension, does he get traded in July?
Ohtani, right? Yeah.
Yeah, if they're not involved in it, and his free agency, we're heading towards next offseason, will be the biggest ever. My first storyline is just, it's an obvious one for me, is just the rule changes. And we're going to begin to see some issues in spring training, right? Because we got the WBC. The best players in the world are leaving for large chunks of a year where we have seismic changes when it comes to limited shifts, quicker pitch count. We also have a whole bunch of new umpires. I think 20 new umpires who are coming in at the trickiest time ever. Now, they were in the minor leagues where all these rules were applied, but I'm fascinated to see how quickly players adapt. These are the best players in the world. They'll adapt, but it will be slow going at first. And since we know this, anytime they change any rules, and they're changing more than ever, the whining and moaning by fans, coaches, managers, players, etc., is going to be really something.
Well, I don't want to hear about the pitch clock. They've adapted very easily in the minor leagues. Now, of course, minor leaguers have less room to whine. So, I'm sure you're right that there's going to be some whining. I do like the changes that were made by and large. I do like the banning of the shift. I do want to see that hard hit ball up the middle still be a hit, as it was for years, until some genius, and he was correct, decided to shift against all of the great left-handed hitters in the game. So it certainly will have a big effect on those left-handed hitters, the left-handed power hitters, who, a lot of them, their batting averages. Rizzo's an obvious example for us New Yorkers, but there are a ton of them. Corey Seager, many guys who've seen their average go down by 50 points, and they're going to get their averages back, I think, and it'll be better for the game. I like the pitch clock. I like the changes. So you're not going to hear any whining from me, that's for sure.
Well, give me another storyline you're looking forward to, John.
Well, I think the Pirates have the big guy to be potentially be traded in Brian Reynolds, a very good center fielder, good bat with some power, and they have not been able to get him on an extension. I hope the Pirates do it. I like some of what they did this winter, but this would be a big one for them. They've offered 6 years and about $76 million with no option. So no club option, which is a plus, but I'm sure that he's looking for something in the 9 figures, and I get it. I mean, I know that Sean Murphy signed for 6 years, $73 million with a player option, and this is a little bit better than that. But this being a center fielder, not a catcher, those prices are a bit higher. So I hope they get down to try to sign him. I think that would be good for the Pirates. It doesn't feel like it's going to happen. He has asked for a trade. Obviously, the Yankees are one of the teams interested. As we know, they still have a left field situation. Marlins are a team that I've been told has been somewhat aggressive, but not aggressive enough. They're looking for a huge package. People have said a Soto-like deal. That's obviously not going to happen. I mean, you don't offer a guy $76 million when Soto turned down $440 million and expect to get that same kind of a package. If they do trade him, they should get 2 very, very good prospects back, at least, though. So it'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. He's the top guy out there on the trading block right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned Soto. My suspicion is this goes into July, like
Probably,
Soto last year, and that's the real deadline. I think August 1st, 6 p.m. is the trade deadline this year. I'm going to mention something else that will play out in spring training, John, and that's the World Baseball Classic. I think that the best group of players they've gotten to agree to go are going to go. Now, there's a long time between here and there. So, guys will drop out. As we know, the Yankees already kept Luis Severino out. I think they're trying to keep Nestor Cortez out. They're the Yankees. They think there should be different rules for them than everybody else. But
wait a second. Should Severino really be playing? I mean, he's been injured a lot. I think that's the right call.
But they're Yankees. They think that they're special.
Well, I mean,
I'm, I'm
they are the Yankees, so
Yes, I want to throw out a couple of names for our listeners. They're probably going to be posted after the season. So it's don't just watch the guys you know, Trout, Kershaw, etc. Right? You think I mess up American names, right? Yoshinobu Yamamoto is the reigning Pacific
yeah.
League MVP, the best pitcher in Japan, probably. He's almost certainly going to be posted after this year. 168 ERA last year, 205 strikeouts in 193 innings. And Jung Ho Lee, the Korean left-hand hitting center fielder, he won the MVP there last year as well. 66 walks, 32 strikeouts, 23 homers. And one other player to keep an eye out. He's already said he likes the Yankees, but he can't be posted for 3 more years. Is the third baseman Manataka Murakomi, who hit 56 homers last year. So if you're watching these games, especially if Japan, Korea get into the next rounds where they come here, that should be fascinating for maybe our listeners to watch that group of players.
Yeah, well, they all like everybody likes the Yankees, and Joel, they are special. So we're coming full circle on that.
It could be
The Yankees aren't the only ones who think that they're special. It's kind of a worldwide belief that they're special. And Yamamoto, I mean, I've heard people say that he's better as a pitcher than Ohtani. Of course, overall, nobody's better than Ohtani. He's the best player in the world. I mean, Judge was maybe the best last year. I would say that's fair, but Ohtani's the best player in the world. I'm going to be a little provincial with my last storyline, and that's a Yankee left field situation, which is getting a lot of play in New York, maybe outside of New York. Nobody cares. I do think the Yankees improved this year. They were not able to add that left fielder for whatever reason. As we do this, I mean, I know there have been talks with Profar. They've certainly been interested in Reynolds. I don't anticipate either one of those things happening in the next few days. You never know, but for now, Aaron Hicks, I think, is the favorite. I don't know if they actually said he's the favorite. It feels like he's
Brian
the
Cashman
favorite.
told me he's the favorite.
All right. Well, maybe you're the favorite then, because they didn't tell me that. But I think the fans are going to be quite curious, and being kind here, to see what Aaron Hicks can do coming off an injury, and obviously had a poor season last year. I thought Oswaldo Cabrera was pretty impressive in the limited time that we did see him. So I think they have a decent fallback option. Esteban Florial, the other option. I mean, he reminds me a little of Melky Cabrera, and then he looks terrible whenever we see him. And then he ended up having a great career, considered very talented. I don't know. He strikes out an awful lot. So I think that's kind of the long shot in the field. But I don't think it would be terrible if they ended up with Cabrera. But keep an eye on what Hicks is doing, and if Hicks can't do it, certainly the Yankees, they're near that threshold, and they don't want to go over that luxury tax threshold, $293 million. There's only one Steve Cohen, but if they have a chance to get Reynolds, it's something they like. They will do that.
Yeah, he reminds me more of Melky Mesa, if you remember him.
I do remember Melky Mason.
He was a right-hand hitter as opposed to Florial, but the Yankees kept thinking the talent would be something that would work in the majors. It didn't. I was going to go a different way, but because you did this, I actually think the bigger Yankee story going into spring training, if we're going to stay provincial, is Volpe and Peraza. Because to me, the only way they change their team and they beat the Astros in the postseason is if they become better at baseball. Like, we know they could play the power game, both power pitching and power hitting, especially when Judge is healthy and thriving. But the offense generally doesn't work in the postseason. We see the Astros, or in the right year, the Rays or the Red Sox or whoever, are better at baseball than them. The sense we get from the people who run the Yankees minor leagues, and quite frankly, scouts from other teams, are that Volpe and Peraza are good at baseball. They're good hitters. They can hit for some power. They play defense. They have speed. In a year, rule changes. Speed will be enhanced. The Yankees need those guys to be good baseball players starting in 2023. Derek Jeter won the Rookie of the Year as a rookie shortstop, and they won a World Series. It's hard to make anybody else Derek Jeter.
That's what I was going to say.
So to keep in mind, Jeter had a very good year, but a year not that different from Jeremy Pena's year last year, and they won the World Series, the Astros, with a rookie shortstop. The Yankees need those two players to be good baseball players to maximize who they are in the present.
Well, there's only one Derek Jeter. I don't think we can count on anybody else being Derek Jeter, but these are their
1996 Derek Jeter.
Yeah. Well, he was good. He was pretty in a home run. I remember in Cleveland. I can remember that day like it was yesterday. I'm sure he can. He was pretty good. I'm going to have to go back and look at the stats, but I think they need one of them to at least one of them to come through for this year. And to me, it feels like it's probably Peraza. We saw a little bit of him last year. He was very good, looked very capable at shortstop. I guess in your scenario, you have Glaber traded probably, right? If you have both guys on the team and playing significant roles, you're thinking of a trade. They haven't found a trade for Glaber. They haven't found any of these trades. IKF, they've been talking about trading. I'm wondering, they may have made a mistake giving him tendering him a contract and paying him $6 million at this point. I'm not sure. I wouldn't rule out that, the money does play. I would not be shocked if IKF is their shortstop to start. Would you be surprised by that? I wouldn't be. I like to see. I'd like to see Peraza, but.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Hicks is going to play in left field. Brian Cashman told me this wasn't about the money, right? I asked him if everybody made $720,000, which is the major league minimum, who would be the starting team?
Right.
And he still told me Donaldson would be the third baseman and Hicks would be the favorite in left field. I'm not really sure I buy that, but my gut, John, is they feel they have trades they could turn to for Torres and IKF. If they have to in spring training. My thing, again, just to go back to the Jeter thing, is Jeter was terrible in spring training in 1996. Terrible on both sides of the ball. But with George Steinbrenner as the owner, they committed to it because they believed in the player. At some point, the Yankees are going to have to get off the IKF train and this other train. Like, if they're going to maximize it, tell me one of these guys is the starter and go with it and then figure out the other stuff. You'll make trades, etc. I think they have to commit to a guy, and that guy can't be IKF, who's too nervous to play in this marketplace at a high level.
I think IKF can play shortstop probably somewhere else. I think he's got the capability. Well, no, there's more than Kansas City. Not everybody's the Yankees, as they'll point out to you, and I agree with that. They are special, and it is more difficult, and we've seen guys, mostly pitchers, come over here and not be themselves, and maybe that's behind the IKF in the playoffs. By and large, he was okay during the regular season, I thought, but so you could live with him as the shortstop. I do tend to agree he'd be better elsewhere. I thought Peraza looked very solid. I think he'd be very good. Let's not forget, though, that Jeter, your memory's better than mine for what happened in spring training. I know that was a big spring training, and I should probably remember that Jeter was terrible, but let's not forget that year and a half before, there was a strike, and we watched him in the minors, and even if we didn't watch him, we saw the stats. He was hitting 350 at every level. So we kind of knew at some point, whether that was the point or not, that he was going to be a superstar. I'm not sure we know that about even Volpe or Peraza at this point, but Peraza looks ready as a shortstop. So to me, I get Hicks in left field. I kind of think it should be Peraza at shortstop for the Yankees.
Yeah, they've got to commit to it. Jeter was a top 5-10 prospect going into the 96 season. So is Volpe this year. At some point, you gotta go with the young guys. On the subject of a young guy, I hear the Super Bowl is coming up this week, John, and Patrick Mahomes Jr. is the quarterback for one of the teams.
You are an expert.
We have his dad, who
Terrific.
also played for 11 years in the major leagues. Pat Sr. coming up, if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. Back on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman, and we're so happy to have as our guest 11-year major leaguer, 6 teams. Got to know him a little bit when he was with the Mets in 1999 and 2000. That's Pat Mahomes. He's a great guest this week because this is the nexus between baseball and football. Of course, his son is the starting star quarterback for the Chiefs, who plays Sunday in the Super Bowl and against the Eagles. And I spent time, Pat, trying to figure out what's the right question to ask, a baseball question or a football question to open this. And I realized we have a newsmaker in some ways on our show this week. What's up with the right ankle hurt around the world? How is your son going into the game on Sunday?
Well, I think he's improving every day. All the reports I'm getting from him, which he's not going to tell me the whole full truth, but he said getting better every day. Just general soreness, and he feels like he's going to be ready to go.
Pat, John Heyman here. I have got to ask you now, obviously he was the 10th pick overall, so a lot of people saw stardom in him. When did you realize or think that he was going to be a superstar in the NFL?
Well, I don't know if I ever thought he was going to be a superstar. I thought that he started making some really good progress there about his sophomore year there at Texas Tech, and thought then I said, okay, he's got a chance, you know. But being in the air raid system, so called, Big 12, the way they played, hadn't been a lot of guys that had been successful, in the NFL there. But I knew that the way he studied the tape, the way he retained information, and some of the throws and stuff that he could do, I thought, maybe he'd have a chance to go up there. And I figured it wouldn't be as quick as it happened, but I thought he would be all right once he got it all figured out.
You mentioned his throwing. I don't know if everyone who listens will know your son was the 37th round pick of the Detroit Tigers back in 2015. Like yourself, he was a three-sport star in high school. Did you ever have a moment where you thought he'd be following you into baseball instead of football? And if not, what was the change there?
Well, I mean, that is, yeah, he ended up getting drafted in the 37th round, but that was really kind of distorted. They actually called him the first day of the draft and offered him, a nice amount of money to sign, and he told him that he was going to go play football. So he did not sign. So then once after that was done, Detroit called us a little later after we was on our way to Lubbock, and they told him they were going to draft him because he was, such a nice kid and everything, and they wanted him to have that on his mantle. But to tell you the truth, I've always thought, my whole life that he was going to be a baseball player, and that's the way things were trending until he stepped on the football field his junior year and got to be the quarterback and just fell in love with it.
I think you told a really good story to Steve Serby, and I was wondering if you could repeat it now. I think you mentioned that originally they put him at shortstop, and his arm was too good for the first baseman. And what happened from there? I guess they didn't let him play shortstop after that, or they told him he had to throw a certain way. It was just too good.
Well, what happened was we went to tryouts or whatever, the first practice or whatever, and they had the kids lined up at shortstop first over there, and they would hit them ground balls, and you throw it over to first base. They were trying to see what they had, far as all the players, and Patrick got his, and he fired it over to the first baseman, and the first baseman misjudged it, and the ball went right over his glove and hit him right between the eyes, wearing glasses, and they just shattered him. And so the coach said, just throw the ball 3/4 of the way there and let it roll there. Way we're gonna have to do it. And I told the coach, I said, no, I said, we're not gonna do that. I'm gonna teach him how to throw the ball bad, So just put Patrick at first base and then let the other kids go. And then once we get somebody that can catch the ball, he can move back to shortstop.
Yeah, Pat, there were some beautiful pictures as part of that story of your son shagging when you were with the Mets. And you had a good story there also where is he 5 years old, 6 years? He's not that old in those pictures. And I think Bobby Valentine had some concerns about him being out there, and you dispelled those concerns pretty quickly, didn't you?
Yeah, he was 4 years old when I first started taking him there. That was in '99, and I got him in a little uniform. I had the equipment manager make him a uniform, and had a little locker right there beside mine, and shower shoes, the whole get up. And so I would take him out to the field, and Bobby called me in the office. He was like, hey, he said, he's a little small to be, going out there. And I was like, well, he'll be all right. I'll be around him and whatever. And he goes, well, when y'all got to do stuff, hit and do different things, who's going to be out there with him? He might get hit. And I said, well, I can tell you one thing, Bobby, if he gets hit, I said, I promise you, he won't do it again. So he's going to be okay. So after Bobby saw him out there running around and tracking the balls and having an idea of what he was doing, he was like, okay, that's fine. And we went from there. Next thing you know, he was catching balls off the big leaguer's bat. I think the first one he caught, Robin Ventura hit, and he caught it in it's probably the happiest day of his life, going to that point.
I can't even imagine a 5-year-old catching a 375-foot fly ball. Obviously a prodigy. And of course, I touched base with Bobby this morning, and now he remembers that Patrick, he said, he was actually better than some of our outfielders. I think he was kidding, but Bobby. I want to ask you, we mentioned he was a 10th pick overall, and I know this. If there are any Chicago Bears fans listening, they're going to feel bad about this. What was his reaction? The Bears traded up to get Mitch Trubisky and pick him with the number 2 pick. There are a lot of quarterbacks who fall in the draft for whatever reason. Some reason it's hard to decide based on what they do in college, who's going to be a great quarterback, who's going to be the best. We all know Brady was picked number 199, and Joe Montana was in the 3rd round, 10th pick overall, still pretty good. What was that day like? What was the reaction like? And did he ever, 10th isn't too bad, but did he ever feel, he's clearly the best of them all at this point. Was there ever a chip on his shoulder that, why they picked somebody before me at quarterback?
Well, I don't think there was anything actually on before draft day. When Patrick decided that he was going to apply for the draft and enter the draft, he got a late 1st to 2nd round grade, which is where they projected him to go, which I wasn't that worried about, because I knew that once he got in front of the people and started, recalling the plays and doing the install and doing all that stuff, that they would see that he was a lot more intelligent than people thought, coming out of college. And once he got in those rooms, I knew his stock was going to rise. But he went on like a few of those visits where, I think he went to Houston, he went to Chicago, he went to New Orleans, Kansas City, of course, and a couple others, and got to, spend a day with them and do all the stuff. And they were so impressed, with what he could do, that they told him that they were going to draft him, with their pick. And then once the draft started and that didn't happen, I think it kind of lit a little fire on them, and as you saw, when he was counting the fingers and doing all that stuff, that's the stuff that motivates him. And he's such a competitor that anything like that can, easily, tick him up a little bit. And so, every time we play the Bears, they better be ready to go.
Pat, Pat, if I'm thinking of anyone who your son reminds me of, it's actually not a football player. He actually reminds me of Steph Curry a lot, also the son of a former player, in that it feels like he's changed the game. There's a smoothness to how he plays, and now every quarterback is trying to be like him, like everybody's trying to be like Steph Curry now and shoot, and it's not possible. There's the best, and then there's everyone else. I just wonder, you're watching the guy. There in sports in our country, is there anything more powerful than being the quarterback? At any point, do you have this, I can't believe this is my son. He's the best player at the most important position in sports in this country.
Well, he, the guy that I always said he reminded me of was Steve McNair a little bit. Kind of a tougher kid that would stand in and take the hits and all that, and had the scrambling ability and be able to throw the ball. So as I've been watching, I can see a lot of different people in him. For him to ascend to where he has ascended so far, is shocking and surprising, which I can't say that much, because I've been with him ever since he started playing sports, and I've seen him play 3 different sports, and he's always been one of the best players, if not the best player, on every team that he's ever been on. But he's always lifted his teammates up too. So I'm shocked it happened so quick, but I'm not shocked in what has happened. But I'm very proud to say that I feel like we've done some things right.
You obviously have. I want to, since you both played both sports and other sports, I wanted to ask you, first of all, what's his involvement with the Royals? I know that he is a part owner of the team. Does he have any input on what's going on with the Royals? And also for you, you had a more than a 10-year career in Major League Baseball, but I understand you were a big star in football. Why did you not play football?
Well, the reason why I didn't play football was because I don't like to get hit,
I
so
don't blame you.
I sit out there, I thought I was going to be an outfielder in the big leagues, and ended up being a pitcher. I ended up getting drafted as a pitcher when everybody told me I was going to be drafted as an outfielder. But either way, unless the ball came back and hit me, I didn't have to worry about getting hit. So he's a little bit tougher than I am. I can honestly say that. And I was going to go play basketball at the University of Arkansas. That's where I signed out of high school. That's where I committed to. But it ended up being a deal where, he just loved the game, and he loved everything that it did for him. And so he just fell in love with it, and he's been studying ever since.
Pat, if I could just flip it over to your career, I think your best season was 99 with the Mets. You were 8-0 for a team that finished tied for the wild card. So you don't go 8-0. They don't play the game against the Reds that got him in. They beat Arizona. They beat Atlanta. I want to focus on a game, and you tell me if it was the highlight of your career. Unfortunately, it came in a loss. The Mets lose the first 3 games of the NLCS. They win the next 2. Al Leiter gives up 4 runs before, doesn't get an out, gets taken out of the game. You come in with 1st and 3rd and no out. I think a sacrifice fly by Brian Hunter, but you pitch 4 shutout innings and put the Mets back in line. They actually led twice in a game that they were losing 5-0. I think it was 8-7, 9-8, and they eventually lose 10-9 in 12 innings. Did you guys actually believe that you were going to be the first? Remember, this is pre-Yankees Red Sox, the first team ever that came back from a 3-0 deficit to win a series?
I think we actually thought it. Once we got to going, we got those 2 games, that Grand Slam single or whatever you want to call it. Momentum was riding high. And funny story about that game is I had pitched the previous 2 games, and I was asking Al Jackson in the bullpen that day. I was like, "Who you think going to be the first guy up?" And he was like, "Probably you." And I'm like, "There's no way. Dotel hasn't pitched, Kenny Rogers hadn't pitched, or Hershiser hadn't pitched, So I'm thinking one of those guys would be the first guy up. And at that time, the phone rings, and it's them telling me to get up. And, coming in, man on 1st and 3rd, no outs, down 4-0, knowing what was on the line. I would have to say it was the highlight of my career to be able to go out there and give us 4 innings and not give up any more runs and keep us in that ball game.
Well, we have you within a week of the Super Bowl, so I've got to ask you, what's your prediction for the game, and why are quarterbacks graded on the number of Super Bowls they win? Obviously, any quarterback who makes the NFL is unbelievable. The ones who make the Super Bowl, even better, but they decide who the best are by how many Super Bowls they win. I couldn't argue with Brady at this point, but is that fair that that's how we judge who the top 5 quarterbacks are? And does he have that in his mind that he wants to be? I don't know if you can be number 1. To beat Brady, that's pretty hard, but to be near the top.
Well, what I know is that he wants to be the best that he can be. So if that includes several Super Bowls, so be it. But I know he goes out there every day with a plan to get better each day and try to win as many ball games as possible. And that's all you can do, and let, the results be what they want to be. But I can definitely tell you, yes, he has a desire to be the best player, in the NFL. And he'll keep on going and playing the game. And then at the end of it, everybody can look back, and then you can make your decisions then. As far as winning, several Super Bowls and being judged on that, it's a team sport. So, all you can do is try to put your team in the best position to win, try to get there as much as possible, and try to, win as many as you can. And other than that, there's nothing else you can do, whether it's fair or not. It's just the way it is.
The Eagles are favored, so I should ask you, follow up. you guys feel confident you guys are going to be able to win this one? I know he's 1-1 already. He's already been in. This is the third Super Bowl. Incredible. Does he feel good about this one? I mean, the Eagles have been really good this year.
Anytime Andy Reid is on that sideline, I feel good about it. I know Patrick's going to try to execute his game plan as best as possible. You got Kelsey, you got the defense playing good and everything. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think it's going to be a great game, and I'm hoping that we come out on top on this one. I feel good about it. I'm not nervous about it. So we'll just go play the game, and we'll see what happens.
Well, to wrap it up, you mentioned Andy Reid. I'm going to bring you back. John mentioned his name earlier. We'll be provincial. We're both New York writers. Can you tell us about your New York experience? You played for Bobby Valentine. Not everybody loved playing for Bobby Valentine. You mentioned a lot of names. That was an exceptional team. Ventura, you mentioned, Hershiser, Rogers, Dotel in the bullpen, also Benitez and Franco, Mike Piazza. What was your experience like? It was back when Shea Stadium was still open, playing for Bobby Valentine and the Mets.
Well, I love Bobby Valentine. I know that a lot of people have a hard time playing for him, but he had the utmost, trust in me. He put me in a lot of great situations, situations where I could do my best. And I love him. I love those teams with the Mets. Those 2 years were the best 2 years of my professional career. I love the city, love the fans. I think that's what kept me going. That's what made me 8-0. That's what made me never lose a game at Shea Stadium. Is that I knew that if I didn't go out and perform, I was going to hear it. So I didn't want to hear it. So I went out there every time and, gave it my all. And I love that city. I actually went back for the Old Timers Day this year and had a great time as usual. And they've always treated me well. So, yeah, I love my time in New York.
Well, I know this is a precious week for a father to see their son excel at this level. I know you've been holding off somebody out there, so John and I appreciate that you've done this interview with us. Enjoy the week. Best of luck to your son. And thank you for joining us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman.
Well, thank y'all for having me. And anytime, man, just, give them my boy Jay Horace. Let me know. And always there for y'all.
Back on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. And John, we get to play Hit or Error again to end our show. Hit or error?
I'm going to play you, and I'm going to give an error. And somebody you alluded to earlier in the show, Artie Moreno, staying with the Angels. I'm going to say that's an error, probably not for him, but for baseball and for the Angels organization. Their best hope to keep Shohei Ohtani, which is where all eyes are on right now. If you're in Anaheim, Los Angeles area, and you're an Angels fan, keeping Shohei Ohtani is everything. And they had a shot. Joe LaCobe was one of the 5 viable entries who are going to be bidding on the Angels. He has run the Golden State Warriors. You're more of a basketball guy than I am, but you know that he's kept his stars generally. Obviously, we know Durant is in New Jersey, which was a mistake for him, but he kept Steph Curry, who you mentioned earlier in the show. He's kept Draymond Green. He's had a bunch of stars. They've won multiple championships there, and he was one of the main bidders, and I thought that was their best hope to keep Ohtani in Anaheim or LA, whatever you want to call it. And Moreno loves baseball, so I give him credit for that. But I think he should have sold the team if he wanted to do right by Angels fans.
You're certainly not keeping up with basketball. The Nets have been in Brooklyn for quite a long time, not New Jersey. So I know that you haven't been paying attention.
Barclays Center.
I think we've done this. That's currently in Brooklyn. I think we've done this 4 times. Am I right that you have 2 hits and 2 errors in that time?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tie you at 50% with all the negative talk. I know you're going to say last week wasn't a hit or whatever nonsense. But my hit is simply going to be that the next time we talk, spring training will have begun. The people who are involved with the WBC get to come a little earlier, starting on literally the day after the Super Bowl, the Monday. By the middle of the week, it's pitchers and catchers for real for everyone. About 5 days later, it's hitters. We'll join them and it will be full squad. Johnny, after all these years, and it's over 30 spring trainings I've covered, I still like spring training. It isn't as good as it used to be because there used to be more time and no internet and cameras. And so players would talk to you a little longer. You would have a better relationship. Which I think building relationships is what our business is about, so you could produce the best product possible. It's still the place, though, where it's a little calmer. You could be on the field. You could be talking to players, executives, coaches. And I look forward to spring training every year. And so my hit is simply getting to go down to spring training again.
I like it. The positive Joel Sherman.
Yes.
Beautiful. I'm with you. Spring training is fabulous. I think it's better. Port St. Lucie's improved. I still say Tampa's improved. You may disagree, but love to get to Arizona as well, which is
both of
convenient.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember early on, they were kind of little cow towns, and they've grown up quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the next time we'll be talking to you will be from spring training. I believe John is opening in Port St. Lucie. I'm opening in Tampa. We'll do a flip-flop after about a week or so. I think we're both going to Arizona this year, and we're going to continue to try to do the show each week, which is a podcast from the New York Post. Thanks to Andrew Hartz, who always does such a great job navigating us through as producer of this show. This podcast drops on the Yes app on Tuesday at noon, because we went a little earlier this week with our guest Patrick Mahomes. So don't forget, Tuesday afternoon about noon on the Yes app. This drops. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Give us a 5-star rating, and the navigation starts for real. Bats and balls, pitchers and catchers. By the next time we talk to you, that's if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman.